Be me. Name is Garrison. 34 years old, senior account manager. 14 years in B2B consulting. Watched my company destroy itself. In the span of 6 weeks. Over an email filter. An email filter powered by artificial intelligence. That nobody asked for. That nobody needed. That cost us everything. This is the story of how one HR mandate killed a 23-year-old consulting firm. How forcing AI pronoun filters onto every outgoing email drove away the clients who paid our salaries, leaving us with perfect inclusivity scores and zero revenue. How we achieved a hollow moral victory while the company collapsed around us. Let me tell you how it happened. From the inside. Where the warnings were ignored. Where the numbers were dismissed. Where ideology ate the business alive. The firm was called Castellin Partners, a mid-sized consulting company specializing in international business development. We helped companies expand into new markets, navigate regulatory environments, and build relationships with foreign partners. Our client list included manufacturers, tech firms, legal practices, and engineering companies with global footprints. We had about 200 employees, offices in Chicago, London, and Singapore. Annual revenue around $47 million. Profitable every year for the last decade. Reputation built on professionalism. On clear, precise communication. On understanding what global clients needed. The trouble started when Vivian became our new HR director. She came from a much larger company where she had led what she called cultural transformation initiatives. Her resume was impressive, full of awards and recognition for progressive workplace policies. Leadership was excited to bring her vision to Castellin. Within her first month, she conducted a comprehensive audit of our internal and external communications, looking for what she called linguistic gaps, areas where our language didn't reflect modern inclusive standards. She found plenty to work with. Her report identified what she characterized as systemic issues in how we communicated with clients. Too much gendered language in our standard templates. Assumptions embedded in our phrasing that she considered exclusionary. A general tone that she described as traditionally masculine authority coding rather than collaborative and inclusive. I didn't know what half of those phrases meant. I was about to learn. Vivian proposed a solution. Revolutionary, she called it. An artificial intelligence communication filter that would scan every outgoing email, every document, every proposal, and automatically adjust the language to meet progressive linguistic standards. The system would catch gendered pronouns and replace them with neutral alternatives. It would flag authoritative phrasing and suggest softer alternatives. It would identify industry jargon that could be perceived as exclusionary and recommend substitutes. Every piece of communication leaving the company would pass through this filter before reaching clients. I raised concerns immediately. In the first meeting where she presented it, asked what happens when the AI misinterprets context. What happens with technical documents? What happens with clients who expect direct, professional, authoritative communication? Vivian said the AI was sophisticated, that it would learn and adapt. That resistance was expected but would fade. Thornton, our CFO, asked about the cost. The AI system would require custom development, integration with our email servers, and ongoing licensing fees. Vivian had budgeted $600,000 for implementation and another $200,000 annually for maintenance. Thornton's expression told me everything about what he thought of that number. But Caldwell, our CEO, was enthusiastic. He saw it as positioning us for the future, differentiating us from competitors, proving our commitment to values that mattered in the modern business landscape. He approved the budget personally, overruling Thornton's objections. Prescott, our head of IT, was tasked with building and implementing the system. He was skeptical from the start but professional enough to do his job without complaint. The development took about 4 months, during which Vivian regularly updated the company on progress and framed it as the most important initiative in Castellin's history. The internal marketing was relentless. Posters in the break room celebrating inclusive communication excellence. Mandatory training sessions on why the filter was necessary. presentations about how our clients would appreciate our progressive values. HR kept track of who attended training enthusiastically and who seemed resistant. I attended the trainings, nodded in the right places, kept my concerns to myself mostly, except with Lorelei, another account manager. We compared notes privately. Both of us worried about what was coming. Neither of us willing to be labeled resistant. The launch date was set for a Monday in January. Every outgoing email would pass through the AI filter starting at 8 a.m. HR had prepared talking points for client-facing staff to use if anyone asked about changes in our communication style. The talking points emphasized our commitment to creating a welcoming environment for all stakeholders. Monday morning arrived. I sent my first filtered email, a routine follow-up to a German manufacturing client, about a regulatory compliance timeline. Straightforward, technical, professional. Or, at least that's what I wrote. What the client received was something different. The AI had replaced industry terminology with what it considered more accessible language. Compliance deadline became timeline for alignment with suggested practices. Mandatory certification became voluntary standards achievement. Failure to comply became opportunities for alternative approaches. My German client responded within an hour. Confused and slightly irritated. Asked if there was a translation error. Said the message was unclear. Wanted to know if I was being deliberately vague about legal requirements. I had to call him to clarify. Explain that our email system was experiencing issues. That was the first day. The problems only escalated from there. The AI was designed to flag what it perceived as gendered or authoritative language, but it had no understanding of context. Legal documents that needed precise terminology were rewritten into ambiguous corporate speak. Engineering specifications that required technical accuracy were softened into vague suggestions. Lorelei had it worse than me. She managed our relationship with Harrington Legal, a prestigious law firm that referred clients to us. Her first filtered email to their managing partner replaced binding contract with mutual understanding document. Replaced legal obligation with shared commitment opportunity. The partner called her directly, asked if she was having a stroke. The AI couldn't distinguish between gendered language in a harmful context and gendered language that was simply accurate. References to chairman were changed to chairperson automatically, even when referring to specific individuals who use that title. Client names that happened to contain traditionally gendered elements were flagged for review. One email to a client named Christopher was flagged because the name contained Christ, which the AI associated with religious terminology. That might make non-Christian recipients uncomfortable. Prescott had to explain this wasn't how names worked. Vivian said he was missing the bigger picture. The international clients were the first to notice something was wrong. We worked with companies across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, many of them in industries and cultures where direct, authoritative communication was expected and respected. The softened, hedge-filled language of our filtered emails read as incompetent at best, insulting at worst. Magnussen was the first major loss, a Swedish executive who had worked with us for 8 years. His company was one of our largest accounts, annual billings of about $2 million. He scheduled a video call with me specifically to ask what was happening to our communications. I tried to explain diplomatically, said we had implemented new communication standards to ensure inclusive language across all our client interactions. He listened patiently, then asked why inclusive language meant removing clarity and precision from professional documents. I didn't have a good answer, because there wasn't one. He told me his team had started forwarding our emails to each other as examples of what not to do. The vague phrasing, the softened terminology, the constant hedge words and qualifiers made us look uncertain, unprofessional, like we didn't know our own business. Magnussen gave us 2 weeks to return to normal communication standards. I brought this directly to Vivian, explained that a $2 million account was threatening to leave over the email filter. She said we couldn't compromise our values for any client, no matter how large. That if Magnuson couldn't appreciate inclusive communication, perhaps he wasn't aligned with our firm's direction. I stared at her in disbelief. $2 million annually. One of our longest client relationships. And she was willing to let it go. Over an email filter. That was actively damaging our business. She called it standing by our principles. I called it something else entirely. Thornton requested an emergency meeting with the executive team. He had compiled data on client complaints, delayed projects, and communication failures since the filter launch. In 3 weeks, we had received more complaints about our communications than in the previous 3 years combined. Response times had increased as staff struggled to work around the AI's changes. The numbers were damning. Client satisfaction scores dropped 22%. Project timeline adherence dropped 18%. Email response rates dropped significantly. As clients stopped engaging with our confusing messages, revenue projections for the quarter were suddenly uncertain. Vivian defended the system passionately. She argued that the complaints came from clients who weren't aligned with modern values, that we were better off without them. She presented metrics showing that our internal inclusivity scores had improved dramatically, that employee surveys showed appreciation for the progressive communication standards. Thornton asked a simple question. What good are inclusivity scores if we don't have clients paying us? Vivian said that was a false choice, that we could have both values and revenue if we just stayed committed to the vision. The data suggested otherwise. Magnuson made good on his warning. 2 weeks to the day after our call, he sent formal notice terminating our engagement. 8 years of relationship, $2 million annually, gone in a single email. His termination letter cited a fundamental shift in professional standards that no longer aligns with our expectations for business partnerships. He wasn't alone. Within 48 hours of his termination, 2 more major accounts followed, then 3 more the following week. Word was spreading through our client network that something was wrong at Castellin, that our communications had become unreliable. Harrington Legal terminated next, and that one hurt particularly badly. They had been referring clients to us for over a decade, a relationship that generated indirect revenue far beyond their direct billings. Their managing partner wrote a termination letter that I'll never forget. He said he couldn't recommend a firm to his clients that seemed unable to communicate with basic professional clarity. The phrase he used was actively unprofessional. Not just different, not just unusual. Actively unprofessional. Coming from a law firm we had worked with for years, it landed like a punch to the stomach. And still Vivian wouldn't budge. The financial reality became undeniable after the first month. We had lost 40% of our projected annual revenue in contract terminations. Not 40% of one quarter, 40% of the entire year's expected billings. The clients who remained were increasingly vocal about their concerns, asking when we would fix our communication issues. Thornton presented a stark choice to the board. Either we suspend the AI filter immediately and attempt to repair client relationships, or we begin planning for significant layoffs and possible restructuring of the entire firm. The numbers didn't leave room for interpretation. Caldwell, who had championed the initiative from the start, looked like a man watching his legacy crumble. He had genuinely believed that progressive communication standards would differentiate us in the market, attract values-aligned clients, and position Castellin for the future. Instead, he had accelerated the company toward collapse. Vivian gave an impassioned speech about not surrendering to pressure, about staying true to our values, about how the short-term losses would be offset by long-term gains from clients who appreciated our principles. Nobody could identify who those clients were. The board voted to suspend the AI filter, effective immediately. Vivian was furious, called it a betrayal of everything we had claimed to stand for. She demanded to know if the board was comfortable sending a message that revenue mattered more than people. Thornton replied that without revenue, there wouldn't be people, because there wouldn't be a company to employ them. The suspension came too late. The damage was already done. Clients who had left weren't coming back. Clients who remained were skeptical. Our reputation in the market had shifted. from reliable professionals to virtue signaling amateurs. Layoffs began 2 weeks after the filter suspension. First, the marketing team that had promoted the initiative, then the HR staff who had administered the training programs, then account managers who no longer had enough accounts to manage. Lorelei was in the second round of cuts, despite having warned about exactly this outcome from the beginning. We went from 200 employees to 140, then to 90, then to 62. Each round more painful than the last. Each round proof that the warnings had been right all along. Vivian resigned before she could be terminated, writing a letter that blamed the company's failure on insufficient commitment to the original vision. She said leadership had lost their nerve at the crucial moment, that if we had just held firm, the values-aligned clients would have eventually appeared. The letter was circulated internally. Nobody believed it. Prescott showed me the technical data. Before he was laid off, the AI filter had modified over 40,000 emails. In its 6 weeks of operation, approximately 70% of those modifications had reduced clarity rather than improved it. 38% had introduced factual errors. By softening precise, technical language, the system had been doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem was that what it was designed to do was fundamentally incompatible with professional communication. You cannot remove authority from business language without removing credibility. You cannot soften precision without introducing ambiguity. You cannot filter professionalism into something it isn't. Castellin Partners officially closed 8 months after the filter launched. 23 years of reputation. $47 million in annual revenue. 200 employees with families. All gone because HR decided that email language needed to be policed by an AI that didn't understand context. The severance was minimal. The references were complicated. How do you explain on your resume that your company collapsed because of an email filter? That sounds like a joke. It wasn't funny to any of us. I found a new position eventually, at a smaller firm with different values. Different in that they valued staying in business over making ideological statements. Through automated communication filters, the bar was low. They cleared it easily. Vivian landed somewhere too, I heard. Another large company. Another cultural transformation role. Another opportunity to implement her vision. I wonder if she'll try the filter again. I wonder if anyone warned them. Probably not. People like her always fail upward. The lesson should be obvious. But apparently it isn't. Because I still see companies prioritizing internal optics over external reality, celebrating culture metrics, while customer relationships deteriorate, winning awards for values, while losing the clients who pay the bills. Professional communication exists for a reason. Clarity serves a purpose. Precision matters in business contexts. When you filter those things out, you're not making communication better. You're making it worse. You're not being more inclusive. You're being less competent. The AI wasn't the real problem. Vivian wasn't even the real problem. The real problem was a leadership team that convinced themselves internal metrics mattered more than external results, that employee surveys outweighed client feedback, that feeling good about their values was more important than keeping the business alive. Anyway, that's my story about AI pronoun filters and global clients canceling contracts, about a hollow moral victory that cost 200 people their jobs and killed a company that had survived 23 years of actual challenges, only to be destroyed by its own HR department. Perfect inclusivity scores. 0 revenue. The math doesn't work, no matter how you filter it.